Hello, everybody, and welcome back to For the World. We had the best time attending the Formula E finale in London and wanted to give you a little recap. Shout out first to all the amazing people who helped coordinate this weekend, the incredible Amy and Saskia at McLaren, as well as Liv, Maddie, Charlie, Holly, Charlotte, and many, many more on the Formula E side. So thank you very much. I'm Tiggy.
I'm Fiona, and we did truly feel so welcomed. What an introduction into this series.
So awesome. So let's start with our main takeaways and thoughts from the weekend. So first of all, just incredible racing. I think that's one of the things that stuck out to me as one of the bigger differences between F1 and Formula E. Just to start, the cars race so close to each other, and it's just kind of crazy to see them bumper to bumper almost.
It almost looks like a video game or some sort of fighter pilot simulation, because the cars literally look like these little futuristic Batmobiles.
They do. Yeah, for sure. And also, whoever starts on pole is definitely not guaranteed to win the race, which I think is a little different from F1. And obviously, we're seeing more competition in F1, which is great, but Formula E, I feel like, has always sort of had that level of crazy competition, almost akin to like IndyCar, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think on top of that, too, the strategy piece of it is so fascinating because not only do you have this kind of all runners can win situation, but you also have the energy management piece of the strategy where you're trying to figure out how to deploy your battery and when, where you need to figure out how to take attack mode, if they're going to implement attack charging, so super fast charging in later seasons, how's that going to factor into things? And then, you're trying to manage all that, and then let's say you're running in the mid-pack and the front two take each other out. Suddenly you have a chance to win. It's just such an exciting, dynamic form of racing that I think F1 fans will really enjoy.
And the team around Formula E is just so cool. Like everybody, it felt kind of like a family in a way, which was really nice and says something given it was our first time there, but we just felt so welcomed and so spoiled, and everybody really seems to care about the series and the mission and the reason that they're all there. So we definitely felt that even just from being there for a weekend. But before we dive in, we're going to give you a super quick high-level Formula E overview if you're not familiar with the series or weekend structure, because it is a bit different. So this season had 16 rounds in city centers. It started in Mexico City and then ended with the doubleheader here in London. A little overview on the teams and the drivers. So there are 11 teams, 22 drivers. And so we'll just list the teams just because I think it's really interesting. There's only one F1 team crossover, which you guessed it, is McLaren. But we have ABT Cupra, Andretti, DS Penske, Envision Racing, ERT, Jaguar, which we learned the proper pronunciation of Jaguar is Jaguar. So we learned that. Mahindra, Maserati, McLaren, like we said, Nissan, and still can't really figure out the Tag Heuer, but that's the
Don't
Tag
look at
Heuer
me, Tiggy. Don't look at me.
team. But like we said, McLaren's the only F1 team currently with a Formula E team, which they actually took over from Mercedes at the beginning of last season. So I thought that was kind of an interesting fact.
And just a quick sustainability note on their season format and their racing calendar. One of the key purposes of Formula E is to really showcase the cities that these races happen in. So they race on city streets, you get city skylines in the background. But that serves a dual purpose. Yes, you get awesome backgrounds and road surfaces for the racing, but you also are in closer to city centers, which means less commutes for fans, less carbon-intensive travel for teams, and that way everybody can really stay engaged and stay immersed in the culture of the city, which is a great sustainability strategy piece in addition to the awesome racing that it delivers.
Yeah, like we got to and from the Excel Center in London by bus and by subway every single time, so that was great. So diving into the format, practice. So each event has 2 30-minute practice sessions, one on Friday and one on Saturday before racing. On double header weekends like this one, there's only one practice session ahead of the Sunday race. And the regulations, what's interesting here is that power is such a big part of the regulation. So the regulations state that there's 350 kilowatt power available for practice, which is fascinating. Quali is where things start to get really interesting. So this is where it differs a lot from F1 in my mind, and where we, I think, had some of the most fun watching. So it's split into two stages. First is the group stage and then the duel stage. So first with the groups, you have two groups, A and B.
11 drivers each.
Yep. And those race basically to get into the duel stage. So if you're in the top, is it 3? I think.
Top 4, I think.
If you're in the top 4 of your group, then you progress to the duel stage, which is where the drivers compete head to head. So it's almost like a bracket where you're facing off against one driver. If you win that, you advance to the semifinal. If you win that, you advance to the final, and whoever wins the final gets pole. And so it's actually really cool. And watching on TV, you get really interesting graphics, kind of real time of on the laps, who's beating who.
And the graphics are super cool in terms of showing you the differentials physically in terms of time where the drivers are. And on the qualifying format now, Tiggy and I were almost tempted to fill out little NCAA brackets because we were not expecting qualifying to go the way it did. I think because, there were some pretty strong title leaders going into the weekend, but it was a total mix-up in quali as well with the structure that you sort of get similar to the races, which is a big difference from F1 where sometimes the quali format can be pretty predictable and surprises aren't that often, but it definitely kept you on the edge of your seat all the way through qualifying.
Yes. So for the actual race format, this does feel quite similar to F1, though it's definitely shorter. They're usually about 45 minutes instead of an hour and a half to 2 hours. And it's a set number of laps, similar to F1. But what's different is that laps can be added for safety car and full course yellow interruption. So the total laps to be added are announced usually 3 laps prior to the end of the E-Prix, sort of like stoppage time in soccer, or football, we should say, in London. But that is super interesting. And one other thing to note about racing is there are no pit stops. So unless there's a problem, obviously, like mechanically or something's going on, there are no pit stops, and charging the car is forbidden, both during quali and the race, as well as throughout Parc Fermé and what they call scrutineering. So teams can charge cars in between sessions and during practice, but not any time else. And I think one of the obvious things that we haven't already stated up front, but hopefully people know, is that Formula E stands for Formula Electric. Like, it is an all electric series. They have electric motors, they have batteries. So that in and of itself is also very different.
But the cool thing about that too is technically they don't get a full allocation of power at the start of the race because they have a dual axle regen system. So when they lift and coast, or if they hit the brakes, their car can actually generate a lot of that power, up to 40% of the power needed to power them through the race. And while charging the car is forbidden during qualifying in the race, there is some talk about adding in attack charge, which has been something that's been thrown around, which is slightly different than attack mode, which we'll talk about in a minute. And attack charge, theoretically, which we should be seeing sometime next season with Formula E, will be where it's kind of like a pit stop, but the teams get a super fast supercharge in the middle of the race. But we'll see how that plays out. It's definitely something that they're still working on. But attack mode is essentially happens during the race where a driver gets an easy extra hit of power. They have to drive off the racing line and they can pick up an extra 50 kilowatts.
Yeah, super interesting. And when to use that attack mode, you get a certain number of minutes for it, is super strategic. So you do have to split it up. I think you get 8 minutes. It can be 4 and 4. It can be 6 minutes and 2 minutes, but you do have to split it up. And it's, again, kind of like pit stops tire strategy in F1, where when and where to use that attack mode is super, super important. So let's talk a little bit about the actual weekend experience and what we got up to. So Saturday, we were with the McLaren team, which was incredible. We were with them in their hospitality. We talked to Ian James. We'll insert a little clip of a couple of questions we got to ask him. Ian James is the team principal of the McLaren Formula E and Extreme E teams. So he has oversight over both, which is super interesting.
And he came in from the Mercedes squad, so he had a little bit of Formula E experience, but really interesting to see how he's used that experience to transition into leadership for both teams at McLaren. So we have a predominantly Formula One audience, but would love your take on why Formula E and what you think F1 can learn from Formula E.
I think first and foremost, they both are incredible motorsports, and I think it'd be crazy to pretend that Formula One is anything other than the pinnacle of motorsport. But Formula E actually offers something very different. It's quite an event character here that we have. Obviously, we're showcasing technology in terms of electric vehicle technology, and the racing is incredibly close as well. So I think, again, both can live quite happily in harmony, which is why I'm very proud that McLaren's involved with both, and alongside all of the other series as well. I was talking actually with the CEO of Formula E yesterday, Jeff Dodds, and he gave an interesting analogy which I thought was absolutely spot on. He'd been to Silverstone with his wife this year, and he said for him it was a bit like Glastonbury.
Yeah.
You know, you're there, you had it was huge, there were crowds of people, you're outside, you came away feeling invigorated but quite tired at the end of the day. He likened this more to a Taylor Swift concert, and I think that's quite an interesting sort of take on it. And you know what? I'd be quite happy to go to Glastonbury, quite happy to go to a Taylor Swift concert, so I think there's room in the world for both.
The Formula E Eras Tour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you heard it here first.
Yeah.
So.
It's coming. So looking ahead to season 11, what are your goals for that, and how are you thinking about the technology difference between this season and next season?
Well, we get the opportunity in season 11 to hit the reset button. So we have a 2-year homologation phase within Formula E. So we're at the end of the first one for Gen 3 now. What that means is that together with our manufacturing partner with Nissan, we can really address some of maybe the gaps that we've got in the package at the moment, and I have absolute faith that they're doing just that. So my expectation is that the performance takes a significant step forward. And then from a technology perspective on the car itself, we're unlocking the front powertrain from a traction point of view. So at the moment it's only used to regen. We're actually going to a position where we can actually use that in traction. So that's going to increase the performance possibilities massively. We're still waiting to see the sporting regulations. So exactly how that's going to work out, we'll have to wait and see. We've got new bodywork coming into the car and various other bits and pieces. So I'm super excited about it. And as I say, I think it's going to take it all to the next level.
Well, they like to keep you on your toes, so.
Certainly do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then we also saw Girls on Track. Hopefully you all saw some of those clips that we posted on Instagram, but it was amazing just to get to meet some of these girls and these students who are interested in everything from aerodynamics to communications and marketing, and just super interesting women and roles that they're trying to get into in motorsport, and just a really cool program. So we'll also splice in some of those clips as well.
My name's Jenny Fletcher. I am the Girls on Track UK Programme Manager. The programme aims to inspire, connect and showcase women across the board of motorsport. We're managed by Motorsport UK, which is the governing body of the sport. And my absolute favourite thing about being the Programme Manager of Girls on Track is making a difference. 8 years down the line now, and we're seeing women in the paddock that have come through the community, have taken on those opportunities and are now living their dream. And for me, that just melts my heart.
So my name's Danielle Andrews, and I am the social media manager at Motorsport UK, which looks after the Girls on Track UK programme and all their socials. My favourite thing about working with Girls on Track is that it's kind of come full circle for me, because less than 3 years ago, I was wanting to get into the sport. I was looking at Girls on Track, I came actually here to this event and spoke to the Girls on Track stand, and then now to be running the Girls on Track social media to enable other people to do what I did is just an incredible feeling, and it's just amazing.
So I'm Abby. I'm interested in team management in motorsport, so anything team coordination wise, and the regulations in motorsport as well.
Hi, I'm Nicole. I'm from North London and I'm most interested in aerodynamics engineering.
Hi, my name is Elisa. I'm from Cambridge and I'm interested in the PR and communication side of motorsport.
So, hi, I'm Rihanna. I'm from Leicester and I'm really interested in aerodynamics.
And then we did a grid walk. So this was incredible. Obviously our first Formula E grid walk. So fun. You get to go right up close and personal to the cars, the teams, the drivers as they're all lined up on the grid. And it's just so fun to see the different routines. Like we saw a lot of drivers giving fist bumps or hugs to every single person who was out there on the team, which was super cool. And just kind of seeing their rituals before they get in the car was amazing, and it was obviously packed, so
and I think even though it was packed, it was a very sort of, we were trying to figure out ways to describe this. In this episode, you'll get a teaser about what Jeff Dodds thinks the weekend vibe is like. But to us, we are saying it's kind of like a mix of like a outdoor family festival with a business conference. And there are tons of families on the grid, lots of kids, pretty robust mobility access as well. So lots of wheelchair users were able to access the grid, as well as folks with mobility devices, which was really great to see. And of course, you get to get up right close and personal with the tech. One of my favorite moments on the grid walks was the batteries, obviously, like any other form of power provision, need to be cooled. And usually airflow over the battery system is enough to cool it during the race. But when they're sat on the grid, you need a cooling mechanism. So we saw fans with little buckets of ice sat in front of them, with steam coming off, cooling those batteries, which was just a super cool little thing to see. But the grid was super friendly, very, very busy, but also got to say hi to a lot of really cool people and, be within 10 feet of a Hemsworth brother. And not something you get to do every day.
Yes, Liam Hemsworth was getting mobbed, as you would expect, but cool to see him for sure. On Sunday, we spent the day in what's called the Emotion Club. That is Formula E's sort of top-tier hospitality center where they had a lot of guests, media, sponsors, partners, celebrities, that sort of thing. But it was really an amazing space, and it was cool. A lot of the Formula E team that we talked to in there, they were like, yeah, treat this like your living room. You're like, make yourself at home. Like, that is so nice. Like, we felt very spoiled. So that was awesome. A couple of the celeb sightings we had. Well, we actually didn't see Draco Malfoy in person, Tom Felton.
Very, very sad about
we
this.
We were on Draco Malfoy lookout for most of the day and unfortunately did not see him. But we did see Liam Hemsworth. We saw Tommy Fury. I don't watch this show. Is it Love Island?
I have no idea.
I think I know we're kind of exposing ourselves right now, so don't judge us. But anyway, Tommy Fury was there as well on Saturday. But that was great. And then sort of to wrap up before we transition into the interview. So for season 10, we went into this weekend with 7 drivers mathematically with the chance to win the championship. It was Pascal Wehrlein who took the championship with Porsche, and then Jaguar won the team's championships. That was great. But what was sad is that the actual winner,
the Sunday race at least, was Oliver Rowland, so native Brit, but it was almost overshadowed a little bit, I think, by all the drama going into the doubleheader, because while 7 drivers went in with a mathematical chance on Saturday of winning this championship, by Sunday it had narrowed it down to 3. So it was really tight, really exciting. But congrats both to Pascal Wehrlein, Oliver Rowland, Nick Cassidy, and Mitch Evans on really fabulous drives from everybody this weekend.
And just a quick note on some of the activations and the other experiences. So they have this fan village, which was so amazing. There were so many different activations, from Girls on Track to other educational things to being able to see the Extreme E and Extreme H cars.
And the E1 Pilot Bird electric motorboats, which I was so impressed by.
So cool. And just, so many different concerts and panels and speakers, and that's sort of where the conference vibe came in, where we were like, okay, in the fan village it just feels like there's so much programming in a really good way and a lot for fans to get involved with.
And a lot for fans to learn about too. There's a lot of stuff with sustainability education and also teaching people about how sim racing works and the whole motorsport infrastructure, as well as educating consumers on how battery electric vehicles and charging work, which was super cool to see.
So season 11 kicks off in December in Brazil, and preseason testing kicks off in November. So there's not actually that much of a break until we get to season 11 of Formula E.
Yes.